All right, so what's up, guys? Right here on another episode on the Eli and Mike podcast show. We have an amazing, I'm going to call you a celebrity just because of your background, right? So we have Johnny Chang here with us, and he goes by No Script Fellowship. So thank you, man, for being here with us.
On our show. So excited. So excited to have you.
My pleasure. I feel appreciate you guys.
Thank you, thank you. You know, and what's crazy is you're actually very local to the area where obviously we have our office in Beverly Hills here in Rodeo. We used to be on Sunset, like Mike said a little earlier. And it's crazy how many people are so locally accessible. And again, it's just reaching out, right? Like networking and getting along with different people. And what really triggered me, and I brought you up to Mike, and this is how we connected with you, is I found you through the WhatsApp with Dr. Chow.
Right.
And the moment your name popped up, I was like, all right, what's up with this guy? So I started saying, no lie, I started Googling. I'm like, I listened, this guy's cool and all this stuff. I'm like, and everything pops up out about you. I'm like, this guy's got something. He's got a story. And honestly, just really appreciate you being on here because you, with everything that you've gone through and everything that you're probably still going through, it's an honor to have somebody that actually has a story, someone that can share with everybody that's watching, something that can impact and change their lives. And I think that's just such a great honor system that you follow. And I want to ask you, like, what is it about you why is it that you want to instill on other people information about, what you've gone through?
I think, just my background in general, I've been through a lot. So I always felt like that loneliness and that emptiness inside of my heart. And I just feel like there wasn't anyone there for me when I was going through the judicial system and the prison system. And now that I've made it out, I almost feel like I have to pay it back. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I feel like everybody's interconnected to the struggle. People may not have been in prison from 12 to 25 like I've been, but every person is suffering from some kind of mental prison, some kind of emotional prison. And I just feel like that's something that I can help free them. And it really, it's more like, now that I'm making money and stuff, it's cool and all. But that's priceless to me. It's something that just helps people.
Wow, that's amazing. And you said you've been in prison for all these years that you were in the past. If we could rewind a little bit to your past, where did you grow up? Did you grow up here in Los Angeles?
So I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
East side of LA, Monterey Park.
Oh yeah, I gotta stop because I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, so I grew up in La Puente.
Oh, that's what's up.
That's kind of what I'm doing.
So I believe you actually, we were watching some of your podcasts, you were doing the research, and you're such an interesting person, and your stories, they're at like crazy stories that, I just want everybody to like know about, because where you're at today doesn't, it's what happened to you in the past doesn't define you today. You know what I mean? And, one of the things that we were doing the research on is I believe you were already in jail or juvenile hall maybe when you were 12 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about it? That's a young age. You know what I mean?
So I hopped off the porch, as they say, at 10 years old. I was getting into fights and in my area, if you fight a lot, we had gangs, in that time. And they kind of start to catch wind of who's a fighter, who's rebellious. I was getting suspended. And that's because my father was an alcoholic. My mother was Buddhist, so very submissive Asian, typical stereotypical Asian lady. Submissive and just in the bed before my dad was in the bed, out the bed before my dad got up. So very, very like traditional. And whatever my dad said went. So he would beat me, beat my mom, beat my brother.
Oh my God. Wow.
So we would just kind of not stay out on the streets just because we didn't want to get home and get beat up.
Wow.
Get in his drunken rage or whatever.
So
I was fighting a lot. And then at the age of 12, I started to like gangbang, right? I joined a gang at the age of 12. I thought if I did everything I wanted to do, I'd be happy. The things that I didn't want to do, I didn't do because I didn't think I would be happy. Homework, chores, stuff like that.
Right.
I would do it.
Sounds like us, right?
Or you didn't even want to be home.
Exactly.
So these are kind of some of the things that drove you to. You were saying that you joined a gang at 12?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Joined the gang at 12. And then, they put me on. It's basically people beat you up, initiate you into the gang.
I've heard of this, yes.
And then they also give you a mission. So not only do you have to like show that you're tough and get beat up, you also have to do some stuff for the gang.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of times it's very evil things, right? And
yes.
So we ended up kidnapping somebody and robbing them and stuff. It was a group of us.
Yeah.
And because I was the youngest one, I took the fall.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
So my
and not to interrupt you, but like running with these gang members and, like about like how much older are they than you when this is all going on?
I was the youngest. So the youngest after that was 15.
Oh,
and then it
wow.
was like 16, 17, 18.
Okay,
So
yeah.
everybody was below the age of 18, kind of.
Yeah,
You're all young.
Yeah, it was like one or two that was like 18.
Okay,
So
but-
we have our little generation or clique,
Yes.
basically.
Mhm.
But yeah, after that, I took the fall, and I was thinking,
Right.
okay, it's nothing. I might get a year or something like that,
Okay.
which I thought was okay.
Okay.
I ended up getting 4 years because our gang, I'm from this gang called Watching. It's a Chinese gang, very, very well known in the San Gabriel Valley, pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
They were already building a case against us. There was already gang injunctions against us. There was already, just like RICO acts, and these Asian task force was against us. So when I went to court, basically, they were basically painting me as like this child assassin.
Oh, wow.
This child, just a gang member that don't look at him. He's young, but they're
Right.
grooming him into being
Right.
a monster.
Yes.
So I ended up doing 4 years actually.
At the age of 12?
Yeah, at the age of 12.
12 to 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's intense.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
intense.
And I went to this place called the California Youth Authority.
Okay.
So essentially, you have to be admitted into it. It's called a juvenile ward, right? They call this juvenile wards.
Okay.
So it's almost like a place for like the insane, right? It's criminally insane because it's really higher than juvenile.
I was
hall
about to
camp.
ask that. I was about to ask that. Okay, so it's more intense.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
The stuff that you did was more intense than maybe like a juvenile hall.
Right.
Okay.
There
Okay.
was fights every day. I think from the age of 12 to 16, I had gotten into 40 plus fights easily.
Wow.
I was just, fighting a lot, and
Yeah.
a lot of gang banging. People bring in new people. You have problems with them. It's
It
awesome.
was kind of like the process of being in the gang. You kind of have to get into fights sometimes to kind of prove your point.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
At
that's
least in
great.
my time. Nowadays, people be shooting and stuff like that. But back then, it was really a lot of fighting too. A lot of
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely like the initiation process of it and, getting joined into that gang is just, it's a lot, you
It is.
have to fight, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy too because we were researching a little bit about you and what exactly ignited that, right? So you got into these fights, and let's just go a little bit more, even more backwards. You were 12, you went into juvenile.
Yeah.
And before that happened, what made you want to get into a gang? What made you become this person that just wanted to rebel and say, forget this world? I think everybody's just crazy and I might as well just be crazy.
Sure. So I kind of was, again, I think I was getting abused in the environment that I was in. We grew up in Section 8 project house.
God, okay.
And so, food stamps, monopoly money, stuff like that.
yes,
And so
yes.
governmental housing. And when you're in an environment like that, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of rage. There's a lot of resentment. And then gangs everywhere.
Right.
So me watching gangs growing up was kind of normal to me.
God.
And me being like a Asian, I remember they would be like, Chinito, Chinito, right? I was like a
Yeah.
Asian kid. And it's not normal for an Asian, at least Chinese Asian. Southeast Asians are a little bit different, but Chinese specifically to be in the projects was different. So we would have to fight because of that. We'd have to. So it was a mixture, I think, of just environment.
Right.
But I would liken it honestly to just my heart being like, I want to do what I want to do. Ever since I was a kid, like I would always slack off. I would take shortcuts. I think it was just instilled in me as a kid to trust and believe in myself super like 100%, And so I think the environment just made me more aware of that, more hyper vigilant, and just like I'm my own protector, and I can't like trust anybody because. And I remember the pivotal moment was around 10 years old when. So I was walking down the in Monterey Park, and it was kind of a gang infested area.
Yeah.
And these people pulled up, had my backpack on. I was 10, and I gotten jumped.
Oh,
for
wow.
the first time. Yeah, I was
Jumped at 10?
Yeah, at 10
Wow.
by 4 people. 4 kids. They were kids. who
Yeah, but
stole
still.
Yeah, they stole my backpack, stole my shoes, stole everything. And then I went home and I told my dad, because he's like, "Where's all your stuff?"
Right.
And then I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I got jumped. I got beat up." And then he just looked at me and he's like, "Until when are you gonna stop lying?" That's what he said.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, "What the heck?" Like nose busted, everything.
Yeah.
Bruised up.
Right.
And then he was like, "If you don't want to do your homework, then just say that." Boom. And he backhanded me, and then I was getting beat up. So I got jumped, and then I went home and got beat up.
Oh, wow.
And I realized at that point, like, yeah, I can't trust anybody but myself.
Got it. So it wasn't even like the environment in your home. It was like everything even surrounding you outside of your home. It was almost like that's what you're used to, all that, rage and everything you were saying, it's so much.
And you were you were definitely not rewarded for being truthful. And that's crazy because do you think that your parents are under the fact that hey, you're being honest. Hey, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Instead of that, it's like, what? And then you get hit for it. And it makes you, I can even see how that can even make you want to rebel and be like, you know what? If you think I'm lying, I might as well lie. I might as well just commit these things that you think I'm doing, just so that you actually do believe that I'm doing something bad.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think that's crazy. And your handle here, No Script Fellowship. What made you create that? Right? Why is it named that?
Because I've noticed that a lot of churches that I go to, I do prison ministry now, and they have like a lot of scripts. You know, if you meet this person, you got to go up to them, you got to have a big smile. It's all scripted, and I'm like, fellowshipping is just like this. It's off the rip. It's all top. No scripts written down.
Okay,
yeah, you just let it flow. You know, so for me, I'm like, no script, not no.
Oh, I love that. Okay, but just no script.
Exactly. Like I'm always about scripture. You guys have been in my lives. I'll back things up with scripture. But what I mean is just I want everything to be genuine, because I think being authentic and being unapologetically you is very important.
Very important.
Especially in a fellowship environment where you're being vulnerable, I'm being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
Definitely. And you're being so vulnerable with this right now, you know, sharing your story when you were 12 to 14 to 16. I mean, this is just very vulnerable stuff, but I know that it's going to be helping our audience, anyone who's watching right now. You know, hearing this story, you know, you might even be in a gang right now or been, you know, you were being previously, and you're just, it shows here that, you know, it doesn't have to always be like that. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, just going back to that, you know, so we were kind of like at the age of you being 16, and, you know, you said that, you know, you were out of juvenile hall, or this correction facility you were in, and, you know, you were still living in the Los Angeles, San Gabriel area. Yeah. You know, how did you correct yourself? You know, you were there for 4 years, or what happened after that?
So being in YA, Youth Authority, you can't really, the first thing that I walked in was what I heard from one of the guys there when they laced me up, meaning like they gave me the rules and regulations. Right. They said that you need to forget your family because this place is going to make you kind of more crazy. And at that time, I was like, I already forgot my family. So sign me up.
Okay.
And after that, it was just like people fighting. I mean, honestly, I've seen a bunch of crazy stuff in there. I've seen and heard people get like taken advantage of, like sexually raped. I've seen some kids doing things to other kids. I've seen people humongous riots, throwing chairs, fighting, people getting beat up. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff in there. So and every day it's you have to fight, because if you don't, then people will take advantage of it, and everybody will take advantage of it, right? So out there, it just cultivated the mindset of like PTSD 24/7. Anybody says something disrespectful, you have to pop off.
Oh wow!
If you don't, then everyone will be like, word will get around, right? And then they'll take your money, they take your food, they'll take everything from you, right? So your canteen, all that stuff, your shoes, your pillow, everything, whatever they can get, they'll take advantage of. So, you know, in that environment, I'm living there for 4 years, mind you. I get out on the streets, I'm way crazy. I'm just like, anybody that looks at me is a god.
So when you got out, even though the juvenile, you were worse. Yeah. Is the way you're saying.
Wow.
That's interesting.
You were sharing that.
Yeah. You would think the system is preparing you to be better when you're out.
And that's why I asked that question too, because I was like, okay, 4 years, you're a child, you know, 12 years old, and 4 years later, you would think, okay, maybe you grew into, you know, this being a better person, especially being so young, you know. But like you just said, you got out, and it was like anybody even mentions anything to you that may sound a little intimidating, it's like you're ready to go.
So true.
So wow.
So, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, cultivated a mindset of like trusting in yourself, just being a monster, honestly, because everyone knows, they call them YA babies. We're all YA babies.
Got it.
They know that we can't function. Like, we're super crazy, super active. And anyone who's watching who understands or has family, they know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, they're the ones that usually end up like right back in prison for murder, or like something like very long, you know, because they don't know how to function.
Okay.
And even in prison, can't function either. So that was where I ended up going to prison for my second charge. And I got tried as an adult at like 16, 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that's when they gave me 10 years, 85%, meaning I have to do at least 85% before I parole out.
Do you mind me asking what exactly that crime was?
Yeah. So that one, it was originally for a shooting. And then, you know, it was like attempted. So they charged me with that, obviously. And I pled out for 2 counts of assault with deadly weapon. So it's basically a shooting, freeway shooting. Shooting at an inhabited vehicle, stuff like that. So yeah, it was for a shooting.
It was that self thing, like you felt like you needed to do something, or was it more like peer pressure? Maybe the road circle was pushing you to do it.
Well, I was driving, and it was really just a road rage incident. I had seen somebody, throwing up gang signs, and I was like, okay, these guys want to be crazy, and that was the first thing. It was like, this guy's disrespecting.
Yes.
It was very impulsive, and that's another thing is when you're in prison and you grow up in those environments, you don't think. Everything is off of impulse. Everything is off of that first level, surface level type of thinking.
Wow.
And so it was very dangerous. Imagine people out here just first thought that pops up, they react.
Right.
That was who I was.
And you were still so young at the time.
Yes.
So this happened when you were 16, 17?
Yeah.
And then, so 85% is around
8 years.
8 years. Wow.
So I ended up having 8 years after that. So from the age of 12 to basically 25, I was essentially, I was only free for 67 days. So I was only free for 2 months and a week from 12 to 25.
Got it.
So you were pretty familiar with being in jail. Like, could you actually even agree that being in jail actually felt more like home than being out?
For sure. Yeah. Being in prison is like, I felt like I thrived in that environment, because it's simple. Like, you don't have to worry about your clothes. You don't have to worry about anything else. You just have to worry about maintaining your respect. And that's one thing that's really big. Yeah. And it's good because then in prison, you have like the car, which is like people you can kind of be around. So as long as you stay solid, and then, and the gang that I was in, we have so many people in there. So even when I went in there, I knew everybody who was in there, and they knew me. They knew my neighborhood. So they were like, okay, this guy's cool. Yeah. And so it actually wasn't too hard, except for the emptiness that I felt. Obviously, the physicality of it. Like, I can't be seeing my friends and outside on the streets.
Right.
And maybe my mom. But like, other than that, it was actually okay. Just this void. And I would say like this hole in my heart that I had, I couldn't fill it. God. And in prison, I was doing pretty well, actually. I learned finally how to program to kind of calm down a little bit. Because in prison, it's different than YA, juvenile. Because it's more gangbanging in YA, but in prison, it's a very racial thing. So even if this guy shot at my friend a week ago and he just came in, we have to be brothers.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I realized this politics was kind of stupid, because it's like, wait, I'm out on the streets and I'm killing you. Right. And then when we get to prison, I gotta sell with you.
Exactly.
We gotta watch my back. So it's it's its own ecosystem. And so, and I finally calmed down. I met some people, and I started to, the OGs in there were kind of like my father figure. Got it. These older Asian, Chinese dudes, Vietnamese dudes would be like, hey, Johnny, you're very like vengeful. We can see that you're young, right. Testosterone. Yeah. So you should do stuff like read books, work out. So I got on my workout routine, my program, as they say.
There you go.
And then I started read
like growing up in there, literally.
Basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to anger management, went to counseling, which they offer in there. I got my GED. I mean, everything was good.
Wow, yeah.
But the crazy thing is, I still felt that void inside of my mind. Like, I couldn't get rid of it. And then I just, wrote it off as, oh, I'm in prison. Of course, I'm going to be a little depressed. Like, that's normal,
And it's like a void of like, can you explain that void? Is it like you're just like lonely? Like,
it's more of like a numb feeling. It's kind of like, no matter what, why am I not happy? And it was this like up and down feeling. Happy when I was happy, and like get a letter, my homies would visit me, whatever. And then sad when it was like you just lay in bed at night.
So you're like big highs and big lows. Like, it was never in between. Either it's amazing or you're having the worst of your life.
Exactly. And it just like this, what I attributed like a roller coaster feeling. And then in the end, like, it just became just numbness. Like, I wasn't happy and I wasn't sad. I didn't feel like I was living. I was just existing. And so I was just like, man, this is just horrible. Like, I don't think this is like, and oftentimes I would have intrusive suicidal thoughts. Like, if you just off yourself, you can just sleep and forever. And it was just, it kept coming to me.
Like the days that you were like, and it was prison that you're in?
Yeah.
And so the days that you were in prison, there was even times of literally you wanting to kill yourself.
Yes, of course.
And like, how did you get over that? Because, again, I know there's people out there that may be watching and they're going through this, and sometimes they don't have an answer for it. And, I know you're sitting with us here today, and there must have been something inside of your head that was telling you, or, hey, don't do it, or there's this one little ounce of hope left. Because I know you were numb, but like, what was that little last ounce of hope? Was there something you were thinking about?
So I think it was just like over time, I was just taking it day by day. So I was like, okay, day by day, like once I get out, I think my hope was, oh, I'm in prison. When I get out, then I'll have a fair shake, right? I can make money. So that was like, I need to get out. I need to get out. So that's what motivated me to get out.
Okay.
The crazy thing is though, when I got out, I still felt it.
I was just about to ask that.
And at that time I had seen my mom. So my mom she originally was traditionally Buddhist. Right?
Okay.
She grew up hardcore Buddhist, did chants, went to the temple, all that, right? And she believed in karmic debt. Good karma brings more good, good deeds, good karma, bad, right?
Right.
So
right.
she one day, like about 4 years before I got out, my mom came to prison to visit me.
Okay.
And she was like, oh, I became Christian. And right there, I remember getting so angry. I was like,
oh, wow.
Mom, we're Buddhists. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like, how can you're like crazy now?
Yes.
You know? And I was like, how could you forget your roots, you know, and this and this, and a lot of pride and ego.
Right.
So she tried to tell me verses. I just like, it was like the car, like rolling up the windows.
Yeah.
It's not listening.
So like, okay, wait, so how old were you when this happened?
That was 4 years before I got out. So what, 20 years old?
So
Okay. 20, something, yeah, like 20, 21, 20.
Yeah. So you literally at one time, even though you look like you're 20, but you know, when you were 20, that's the time where you actually didn't even believe like in Christianity or the Lord. I mean, Buddhism and Christianity are totally different.
Absolutely.
You know, so as you basically not really believing in the Lord type thing. So at 20, that's when that was.
Okay. At 20. And then in prison also I had converted to Islam, right?
Oh,
I was Muslim.
Oh, wow.
For 3 years.
Okay.
Sunni Muslim. So and yeah, all of that. I did read the Bible in prison.
Okay.
Front to back 2 times.
Wow.
But I only read it to weaponize it. Because I was Muslims, I was like,
Okay.
man, I'm gonna get you guys. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was bad.
You had tactics. Oh my God.
So it was like that. And again, even though I became Muslim and even though I read the Bible, even though there was Buddhism, emptiness still.
Oh,
I didn't get rid of it. Right?
So even after reading the Bible 2 times.
Yes.
Wow. So I feel like, and again, I feel like I even had a period in my life where I feel like I had emptiness at some point, but I feel like yours is different. And correct me if I'm wrong or right. I feel like sometimes when people don't have something, they feel that missing, like you said, you have this void or this numbness. Do you feel that it was maybe love? You didn't feel like anybody loved you authentically?
Honestly, it was that at first, that's what I thought, right? But actually, I found out clearly what it was after I got out of prison.
Okay.
And what that was like, so my mom, she, you know, I noticed peace inside of her heart. That's the first thing.
Okay, so yeah, she's at the prison.
Yeah.
She's telling you she just converted, and I think that's where we were. So yes.
Yeah. So from that, she was like happy, and then I was like, okay, this is like, let's see how long this will last.
Okay.
That was in my heart, you know, like everyone who's Christian is always like, yeah, I'm happy, but then let's see how when you become hypocritical.
Yeah,
that was like my judgment.
Right.
So just to keep it real, but
yeah, exactly.
she gets out, I get out, and that's like 4.5 years later, still same peace, right? And then. Mind you, my brother's in prison, so I have an older brother, just me and him. Okay. He's in prison for 14 years too.
Oh, wow.
Same gang that I'm from. I was in prison. She has 2 kids in prison.
Oh, wow.
I just got out. My dad is still beating on her. Not as frequent, but still getting drunk and beating her.
Got it.
She's still living in the projects.
Got it.
But when I noticed something about my mom, she was peaceful. Way happier than me. She didn't have any circumstance to be happy. I could feel it. I could sense the peace inside.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, what is going on? So I asked my mom, what is it? She's like, Johnny, it really is church. But she didn't like push. She was just like, that's just what it is, you know? And I was like, whatever. And then a series of events happened. So I get out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fly straight, right? I'm going to try like to do well. So I applied like everywhere. Me and my friends, like they drove me around to get like a job. Because when you get on parole, you have to you know, get a job, or they'll just reviolate you. Put you
right. They're definitely checking on you, right?
Correct. So, you know, I was off the drugs and stuff, but then I was like very like meticulous with finding a job. No love. You know, there's that little box that says, have you ever been convicted of a felon? I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep it real. I checked it. No love whatsoever.
No way.
Yeah. And after that, I was like, you know what? And then that rage came out again. You know what, man? F it. You know, if they're not going to do this for me, like, I'm going to go straight back into the streets.
Right.
I got plugged in with some friends, started selling drugs.
Yeah.
Started making 30 to 40,000 a month.
Okay.
And then I was doing that for a good amount of time. And again, I was like, oh, okay, I'm making money now. Bought my first cherry red and M3 Beamer, you know, like got my own spot. I was like, okay.
Right.
Again, emptiness. Okay, so maybe it's women. So I started to get with women.
Yeah.
I started to do drugs and still no, I couldn't fill that void.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, again, I'm looking at my mom. Still, every time I see her, happy, doesn't have anything. I give her money. She's like, oh, thank you. It's not like she's like overreactive to it.
Right.
Mind you, we're poor, right? So I would assume if I give her 5,000,
right,
she's like,
it's
wow.
gonna be like the most amazing thing.
But when I give her the money, she's like, oh, when are you gonna come to church? And I'm like, I'm just giving you 5. You want me to take it back?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But
right.
after that, she you know, she told me that, you know, if you passed away, and then how sad and unfortunate would it be to die in your emptiness and also go to like this place of eternal hell, you know?
Right.
And so I got mad, but it did hit me in a way where I was like, outwardly I was pissed off, but inwardly I had fear. For the first time, I was like,
oh,
man,
wow.
dude, like, that's true. You know, what is my purpose in life? Well, why am I born? Am I just born here to shoot at people, rob people, and do evil things? So I was like, whatever. I'm still not going to go to church. High-hearted, very, you know, egotistical.
Right.
But a series of events happened in my life.
Okay.
So my the first event was we had every gang member has this exit plan, right? So my exit plan was I'm gonna rob a drug dealer, and rob one of the well-known drug dealers in our neighborhood, so I could just retire with the money, right? And
so the exit plan is like you're out of the gang.
Yeah, I want to get
like you have to do something to get out.
Well, I mean, not that, but it was more like financially, I wanted to be secure so that I didn't have to keep looking over my back selling these drugs. Because it's dangerous.
Right.
You get violated.
Yeah.
Or you could get robbed. You could get killed.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that and just like retire. And I thought about robbing a drug dealer of all people, bro.
Right.
Because our mindset as gang members, like I said, we don't think. It's very like ABC 1, 2.
God.
Okay, so he has money. He sells a lot of drugs. If I take his money, I'll have a lot of money, and I don't have to do anything. It was like that. But again, drug dealers like me had guns all the time. So unfortunately, when we planned this out, my friend said, I did it with another friend, a childhood friend of mine.
Okay.
And he said, the original plan was I was supposed to go to the right of the car. He's supposed to go to the left of the car. I go to the right, and he steps in front of me. So naturally, I go to the left. And then I hear 3 gunshots ring out, boom, boom, boom. And then I see him on the floor. They're shooting at me, shooting back. I mean, it's like they pulled off, and my friend's dying there, right? And that's the first time I've experienced someone dying in front of me. Like I've been in shooter, right? I've been shot at before, but it's like nothing to that extent where somebody who's my best friend's like dying, right? So I grab him, and you know, obviously he dies in my arms, you know, and like I realized right then and there I felt guilt. Like it was confusion, but then I felt like, oh my gosh, this was my fault. Like this was me. Like I was supposed to die, right? Because if he didn't step in front of me, I would have got shot.
Oh my gosh. Like you literally remember him, like you were supposed to go that way.
Yeah. Because that was the original plan. Like, oh, you're going to go to the right. I'm going to hem up the driver. So the driver's on the left side. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I go, and boom, he goes, and then he steps in front of me for some reason. And I'm like, okay.
So your mind was just like, we're ready to go.
Because we're running off adrenaline.
Yeah.
You're not
saying, okay, let me go to the other side. And that one split second.
Changed my life.
Oh my God.
And so that happened. And then a friend of mine, best friend.
I'm sorry to hear, you know.
Yeah, sure.
God bless. God bless.
But my best friend in the projects, you know, he was a little older than me. He sent me a kite from prison. So he was writing like this really cryptic, eerie note. If you look to the mountains, think about me. I'll see you when I see you. And and I'm like, what the heck is this going on? 3 days later, I find out he commits suicide in prison. So that happened. This all happened within about a week span. Friend dying, him doing that.
Oh, wow.
And
like you got this letter in the mail?
Yeah.
Okay, because you weren't in the jail.
Yeah. He sent him, you know, wisdom, got it. And then after that, I then started to really feel like even more like that emptiness and that void. And I was like, yo, I think my time is up. Like, I don't know if it's God, Buddha, whoever it is, they're showing me that I'm going to die soon because there's just death everywhere.
Okay.
Right. And, but I didn't know what to do. So miraculously, my mom, like her car breaks down in San Bernardino. And, you know, my dad's like deadbeat at the time. My brother's locked up. So she can only really depend on me.
Right.
She's like, Johnny, is it cool if you take me and drop me off at church? So I'm like, sure. So I pick her up. And as I'm in the car though, I'm like, Mom, I'm not going in the church because I know what they're about.
Right.
They're over here fishing. You know, they're gonna be like, evangelizing to me.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. And as we pull up, I see this short little Korean pastor. Right. He's like suited and booted, like you guys suited up, you know, super stiff, right?
Yeah.
And he's like waving, and I'm like, oh man, like here we go, you know. So the crazy thing is, my mom opens the door, and I smell black bean noodles, right? Which is my favorite food. As a kid, like that was my favorite thing.
Got it.
And my dad would make it, my mom would make it. And in prison, that's a big thing. Like food stamps, like mail is gold in there. Phone time, gold, right? So that's because that's the things that's connecting you to the outside world, God, and things like that. So the pastor comes up, and then, you know, my mom closes the window, and he does this. So I roll down the window, and he goes, "Hi, Johnny, heard a lot about you. Welcome home. We've been praying for you. Thank you so much for, you know, like dropping off your mom." Because my mom speaks 3 different languages. She speaks English, Mandarin, and
amazing
Korean. So she was a translator. So they really needed her at the church. You know?
Oh God.
But he was cool. He was like, you know, we made some noodles, and I was like, oh yeah, I could smell it. It's black bean noodles, right? Jajangmyeon, as we say. And then he's like, yeah. Would you like some? He said,
wow.
Because we have like to-go boxes. And then I thought about it, like being Asian, I don't know if it's like with Hispanics as well, but like food, it opens up, like that's a big thing.
It totally does.
Yeah, that invites you.
Right. And so I was like, dang, I can't be disrespectful and just like, yeah, I'll take it to go. See you later.
Okay, yeah, no, exactly.
So I was like, I'm going to just.
Plus, it's your favorite. You know?
Like, I'm going to just pull in. He seems cool. But I told him, Pastor, I'm just letting you know I'm Buddhist. You know, and he's like, yeah, no worries. We're just trying to share a bowl of noodles.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, okay, cool. So we go in, and yeah, he's like, we're eating, and I'm like, dude, these are super fire, super.
They hit.
It's all, they hit. It was all homemade. So, and then he's like, you know, starts kind of sharing a little bit of his testimony. You know, he grew up in church. He was a PK, pastor's kid, and then he starts to say, you know, hey Johnny, I have a question for you. Have you ever thought about sin, and what is sin? And I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Like, I was like, you know, PTSD, right?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And he goes, are you a sinner? He asked me, you know, and then I was like, that's such a loaded question. You know, and tatted down, like, of course, you know, the gang member, you know? Yeah. And I said, yeah, Pastor, I am a sinner. And I said it kind of with pride, like, yeah, I am a sinner, you know? And yeah, I know I'm going to go to hell. Right. Like, sin is evil. And you know, that's what it is. Yeah. And then he goes, not so. And I'm like, what? That's not what it is? And then he's like, no, that's not what it is. He's like, according to the Bible, like it says something different. Most people think it's like evil things, right? So he started using analogies the same way I use analogies in my lives. He started to say that sin is like a virus, you know, basically. It's like the seed of an apple. Right? If you think about an apple, he says, you know, and you look at the seed of an apple, there's no fruits, right? It's just a seed. But then if you plant it as it grows, it produces apples, and only apples. And he said, same thing. When you look at a baby, you don't see the sin. It's pure, right? But as it grows like you, he says it starts to have sin come out. So sin is actually inheritance. He's like, you're Chinese. You didn't choose to be Chinese. Born that way. Your father, his father, his father. He started breaking down sin. Wow. And he said, so imagine if you were just like, oh, I'm going to stop eating these black bean noodles. I'm going to stop eating orange chicken. He said, does that then make you less Chinese? And I was like, no. He said, but then the reason why you're empty is because you're trying to be this imperfect person, this perfect person, but you're an imperfect being. And that's when I was like, how did he know I was empty? Right? And he said, because in the Bible, it talks about this. Right. So sin is not an action, it's an identity. And that's what he said to me. And I was like, oh, snap. So yeah, I did try to, you know, be good from time to time. And I try to like do well. And that's when that emptiness was coming. Cause I'm like, wait, I feel like I should be doing good, but I'm still flawed as a human being. Right. So that's why I was living happy, sad.
So to expand on that, so going into because it sounds like now you're kind of talking to somebody and you're looking into, all right, this guy's kind of breaking me down. He's making me understand another side of life versus that emptiness that you've been feeling for such a long time. Yeah. So I believe, and this is what I think, maybe this was the moment of your beginning of your transformation. Like when did you feel that, all right, Johnny Chang, this is your time. I feel transformation has begun.
Yeah. So from then on, I didn't know. I was just focusing on hope. So when he was explaining that to me, and then he said, you're normal, that's when hope entered my heart. I think that hope, the byproduct of hope is transformation, right? Because all my life I was feeling was empty and just rage. Like the first time I felt love, number one, and I felt hope from him. He didn't say you were evil. He didn't say like all the things that the States, he didn't call me by a CDC number. I mean, he addressed me as my name. He humanized me.
Yes.
And then told me, you're normal. It's cool. And I'm like, no one has ever told me that. Right. So he started to explain, you're that way and you're imperfect being trying to be perfect. And that's why you have to realize that it's normal for you to feel this way. And then when he normalized it, then I didn't feel so alone. Because I looked at everybody in prison, I looked at everybody else in the world. I was like, I think I'm the only one that feels this way, which obviously wasn't true. But at that time, being immature and not self-aware and not hyper-vigilant, I didn't understand like people's hearts. So he was able to see the inside of me when most people would just look at the outside of me, right? So I was like, okay, so from then on, I just felt like this peace start to flow in. And then I'm like, yeah, but what do I do? Right? That was my next question. I said, what do I do? I'm born this way. I can't stop being Chinese. I can't stop being a sinner.
Right.
And then he says, so that's what it is. Do you think it's your job to stop being a sinner? Or do you think there's a man named Jesus who helped you washed all of that? And I was like, dang. And he's like, you can't do it, right? But this man named Jesus, he already did it for you. Do you believe? And then he showed me verses in the Bible, Hebrews 10:14, 10:17. He says, you remember your sins. I said, yes, I do. But in this Bible verse, it says he doesn't remember your sins anymore. And I was shocked because I never seen that. We've had chaplains in prison. We've had priests. We've had apostolics. We've had Pentecostal people come in.
Right.
And the one thing they would say is you need to repent and do better. Because if you keep sinning, you're going to die in your sin and you're going to go to hell.
Okay.
So right then and there, obviously I'm like, well, I sin every day. So I don't know how to stop this.
Right.
You can't just tell me to stop. It's like telling a drug addict to stop doing drugs.
Right.
You have to equip me with the tools.
Yeah, I think most people live that life too. Like even to this day, even before you said that, even I'm like, well, aren't you supposed to try to be good? And isn't that the whole goal in life? And it's crazy how like that psychologically is actually really something different if you really understand it.
Exactly. So he told me essentially to that point was, you're not good. You can't try to be, just like the apples can never try hard to produce oranges like an apple tree. He said, you can't produce any good. That's why you have to lean on something that is good, which is God. He said, the whole life you've been your own God. How has it worked out for you? And I was like, not good, obviously. Did you plan on going to prison? No. Did you plan on doing these things like being depressed, empty, suicidal? Of course not. Right. Did you plan on ruining your life? No. Right. But why did you ruin your life? And then he started to teach me that, Genesis 6:5, that all our thoughts are not our thoughts. There's things that pour into you. And I remember vividly too, like I would lay in my prison cell. Yeah. And he was right, because I would have just one thought enter my mind. So it's usually alone in bed at night. And I'll have this one thought of you're empty or you're lonely. Just that one small thought. And then it snowballs. You don't have friends. Look at your life. What's wrong with you? Bring flashbacks of like me doing things. And now I'm snowballing. Okay. And nothing is happening outwardly, but inwardly, I'm like racing. I'm super tired physically, but my mind is just going. Right. And then he explained to me, he said, next thing you know, tears down your face, or you're sad, you're miserable. And then the next thought that comes is, why am I here? Like, why do I have to live this way? I just want to die, right? Like suicide. So he says, do you want to be depressed? Do you want to be lonely? And I was like, no. Why then do these thoughts come? And then he shared verses where basically it's not you, it's the sin inside of you that's doing that, right? You do the things you hate. I didn't want to be depressed, hated being that, but I was depressed all the time, all the time, right? So from that, he then basically explained it. And I was like, yo, this pastor who has never lived my life whatsoever, how does he understand what I'm going through, like to the T? Right. And then I asked the pastor, how do you know this? He said, I don't know you, Johnny, but one thing that we have in common is that we're interconnected through struggle and sin. And the Bible is a mirror to us. He said, you've never read it, so you don't know. I've read it multiple times, and it's really a mirrored image. It's the Holy Bible, he says, but there's so many unholy things. Why? Because we're unholy people. and it's talking about us as people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So through that, I was like, wow. And it was like,
Powerful.
again, I was, moved. And I was like, no person has ever, let alone someone who's like, doesn't speak English well and is telling me these things,
Right.
through a translator. And I'm
Definitely didn't go through what you went through.
exactly,
You know.
grew up in church. Father was a pastor.
Exactly.
And yet breaking me down perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, there's something, he's onto something.
Right.
This man is wise.
Right.
And I felt that feeling of, if I connect to this person or have him as my mentor, I too will live happily. Like his heart will pour into mine, cast out all the darkness and everything. So from then on, that's when the transformation came. Pastor told me one thing. He said, how is your relationship with your father? And I was like, horrible. I don't even want to talk about him,
Right.
And he said, I understand, and he said, what happened? So I kind of broke it down to him, my father beat me, alcoholic, this, that, and the other. And he goes, yeah, so did that make you feel miserable? I said, of course, till this day, but I don't care. I'm good. Like, I'm all prideful, I don't need him,
Right.
And now I did everything by myself. And he goes, Johnny, like, please don't take this disrespectfully, but I want you to apologize to him. And I was like, where in the world? I don't know, maybe in Korea, because it's maybe what the victim apologized to the aggressor, but not in America. Man, anywhere in the world does the victim ever apologize.
Right.
I didn't ask to be born. I didn't, I didn't have a responsibility. Like he had to be my father, And he goes, Johnny, you're right. And I was like, okay, so why are you asking me, And he goes, but because you're right, you're miserable. And I was like, dang, that's true. It hit different, He said, yes, your father was an alcoholic. Yes, because of you, 99% is the blame for him to traumatize you and have all this generational curse, right? But, don't you feel like sad when you do look out on the streets and there is a father who's loving, hugging their kids? And I was like tearing up at that time, but I was like, yeah, but that's how it is, And he's like, it's not how it is, There are people who, love their kids and you didn't have that, but there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why I'm telling you to say sorry. And so he kind of used the analogy of a war. He said, when two countries go to war, one side thinks they're right, the other side thinks they're right, and they're fighting. And when they fight, buildings are collapsing, innocent people are dying, railroads are broken, phone line communication is dead. There's no peace, it's only chaos. He said, but when one side loses and one side surrenders, then peace can flow. Roads are rebuilt, relationships are rebuilt, economies rebuilt, everybody's happy. So what I want you to do, Johnny, is when you're arguing with your father, for so many times you're right, he's right. That's how divorces happen. That's how people become changed.
Yeah.
Johnny, please just be wrong one time by faith, and I believe God will help you. When I was like, dang, I don't like it, but you make sense.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
it makes sense.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So he said, Johnny, it's like a car, that's full accelerator with no brakes. He said, imagine, most people look at a car and they're like, wow, look, it has 500, 600 horsepower. It's a Hellcat, it's a Lambo, it's a this and that. He said, but the most important thing is the braking system, because the brakes is what's going to allow the car to go super fast, but also bring it back home in one piece. Even if you have a Lamborghini, nobody's going to drive that car without brakes. That's right. So you, Johnny, you're a person who was all gas, all accelerated. You crash out. But I believe like God has put me here to be your braking system. Wow. So if you listen to me, I'll handle it for you. Wow. Please just listen. Don't try to understand. Accept what I'm saying. I was like, bet. I was like, okay. So I'm driving. All these thoughts are coming to me. I'm calling my dad. I'm like, Dad, I was like, hello. And then he's like, hello. And I'm like, hey. And then he goes, who's this? And I'm like, I'm already mad, right? Like, he doesn't even recognize his voice. And then I'm like, yeah, Dad, I want to meet with you. I have something to talk about. And he goes, I don't have any money. So I'm like, okay, I don't need your money. I make more money than you.
Okay,
But I was like, I just kind of remember Master's voice. It's okay. It's okay. Just I'm your braking system. And so I talked to my father. I said, Dad, I really have to talk to you about something. Can we please meet at this restaurant? So in Alhambra, there's a pho restaurant called Noodle City, right? We pull up there and it's awkward. I'm looking at the floor. He's looking at the ceiling. And tension, you could feel it. Wow. So I remember Pastor just telling me, like, Johnny, it's okay. Just apologize. God will work. God will work. So I was like, Dad, I'm here today to tell you that, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry that I was a gang member. Sorry that I was a drug dealer. I'm sorry that I turned your American dream into American nightmare. Like I joined a gang. I didn't help you guys. You guys don't speak English. You went through a lot. And that's why you stayed in the projects. And my dad looks at me and then he just like starts bawling his eyes out. Crying. Oh my God. And then it took him like a while to like compose himself out. And he goes, no, son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a bad father. I'm sorry for like, beating your mom, beating you. I'm sorry I couldn't get a hold on my drinking. And we just got up, like we hugged it out.
Wow.
And like 20 some odd years of pain, it was gone. It's gone.
Wow.
And it was so cool. Nowadays, me and my dad have a great relationship.
Maybe, man.
Take him out to go eat and stuff like that every week. I saw him yesterday, actually.
Love it. There you go.
And
shout out.
after that, I was able to see, man, if I trusted myself and I didn't trust that little pastor that helped me, I don't think I would have ever experienced this.
There's so many people in your shoes that have these really bad experiences with parents. I mean, even Mike, I think you have a similar one, but I think you and your dad are good. But
Right.
so many people are afraid of confronting the problem. Like they won't go up to somebody and say, hey, by the way, we have an issue, but do it in a way where it's an equal playing ground, and discuss the apologetic side. Right. I've actually, believe it or not, I don't know how I'm lucky to have this, but I've always believed in surrendering to whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always, and again, I mean, you can believe me or not, but I'm always like, it's fine if I'm wrong. Okay, bye, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I let it go very quickly. I don't know how I'm just blessed to do that. And it's hard for many people to surrender and accept that you feel so much strength that you're right, that you're just not wrong.
Yeah.
And because of that, imagine the other person feels exactly the same way. So that's what you said of war, right? The clash, right? So I obviously feel blessed, but I think it's because of my experiences. I'm 45, so I've dealt with so much already in my life that I'm already like, yeah, it's my fault. It's okay. I'll accept. It's so easy for me to just be, it's okay.
That's good.
And so basically, you made up with your dad. That's beautiful. It's so good to hear this because I didn't know this part about you. So, I've heard a lot of your interviews and I guess I must have missed that part where you guys are reconnected and it feels so good. You know what I mean? And so, basically from, you being an individual who was always self-taught or, self-driven or you being the one that calls the shots. And kind of, and I don't mean to be this person, it was all about you, right?
Absolutely.
And so now, you're in a world, and if you can talk to us about this, you're in a world now where you're reaching out to, hundreds of thousands of people, we're on your lives at night when you're preaching and, you have 300, 400, 500 people sometimes live or more. And, just engaging with the audience and them engaging with you. And you're helping so many individuals out there. You are not thinking of yourself anymore. Did this come after you reconnected with your father, or it just slowly started happening where maybe you're doing a couple of seminars and it felt good to help others, that void's not there anymore. And then you just kind of grew up from that, or where did this all come from? Because you're so knowledgeable, with the Bible and the verses and all that. And like you said, you did read it twice in prison. But it wasn't really something for you to like remember each verse and all that. And now you do. So like, did you read it again after, I know it's a lot of questions all in one, but if you could like explain that.
Sure. So I've learned to surrender because from that one pivotal moment.
Got it.
And then I started to recognize that I don't know it all. I was actually humbled because I was like, again, didn't make sense to me. I always had to understand everything before I accepted stuff. So I didn't move by faith ever in my life. I moved by confirmation, meaning I had to confirm and then I move. Okay. But this was the first time that he shattered that for me, my pastor.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to have a mentor, right? In anything, right? So he led me to realize that, hey, you're not always right. And when you're not always right, I think the byproduct is surrendering, And so in my heart, I was like, okay, I'm not always right. And then he taught me that your thoughts, again, are not all your thoughts. So it's important to deny your thoughts, forsake your thoughts, and be more in the word. Because that's kind of how Jesus was able to fight Satan, was when he tempted him, he kept saying, as it is written, as it is written. So I didn't know the Bible, but it gave me this hunger to know more of the Bible. Now, being out for so long, I finished the Bible front to back 22 times already.
Oh my God.
So
22 times?
Yeah. So it's not because I'm, trying to boast or flex, but I need it because I do have these intrusive thoughts still, thoughts that will pop up, poor decision making, impulsive thoughts, even temptation of drugs, women, especially now women and all that. So if I'm not in my word, I know that I will fall. Like I'm a very weak individual, and that's just the truth. So I was able to kind of lean more on the word rather than my thoughts, because our thoughts change every day. One minute we're happy, next minute we're sad, next minute we're happy again. So I know that if I follow and believe my thoughts and trust what I feel, like the world teaches us, which is follow your thoughts, believe in yourself, then I will continuously live this up and down, even if I'm reading the Bible. So I've learned I can't trust my thoughts. Actually, I don't trust any thought that pops up in my mind. I go to the word mainly, right? Because the word doesn't change. I could look at it 10 years from now, 10 years before. It'll still say the same thing. Hebrews 10:14, Romans, whatever. So I was able to be like, okay, if I want to live based, I need to depend on something that's based and solid. Right? If I'm depending on this, that's just inconsistent and irresponsible, unreliable. And I'm going to live irresponsibly and unreliably. So from then on, I was able to then also think about other people. God was able to give me the revelation through my pastors as well, through the Bible, that Jesus himself, who was God, right, then came down as a human. That's like me turning into a cockroach, like, stepping down from like that high point. And then being nothing for us. So I've learned that whether it's in business that we're doing now, or whether it's in podcasting, or whether it's in Christianity in general, in anything, or relationships, if you serve people and you work for people, then actually you gain them, right? Like if I'm just focused on profits on my business, which is important, but if I'm just focused on profits, then I'm not solving a need and I'm not helping. Exactly. So it's the same thing. My heart is towards people who went through what I went through, and I'm like, you know what? I want to help people. The money will come after that. That's fine. And on top of that, I can't take it with me anyway, right? My casket is not going to come with a safe. You know what I'm saying? So I can't take it with me. So I've learned that whatever I'm doing now, it's weird. The more I help people, the more happiness pours into my heart. So I'm like, you know what? Like the networking, everything is such a great thing. And I don't have to be fake, right? Like I was, I have thoughts like, man, I'm in rooms with billionaires and millionaires time to time. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, doesn't matter. Just me. You don't have to be like, I know what a trust fund is. I don't know none of that stuff. It's okay.
And it's insane how many people that are extremely wealthy have actually undergone so many struggles. I mean, actually, I don't know if there's a percentage, but I believe there's a large percentage of most millionaires and billionaires that have been in jail, that have done some major corruptions of some kind. And then that's like hard learning, right? They learn through that, is whether it's through the word, whether it's through those problems where they lost. Because we had our last podcast we had is the struggle of knowing you made $1 million and then you go back to zero, and you go to 10 million and you go back to zero, and it makes you stronger. Like, what happened to my money? But I mean, and it could be you're not there for the Lord, or you're not there in your correct feelings of understanding people. So, is there a certain and I don't know this because I need to practice more reading the Bible. I'm going to be real, but is there a certain section of the Bible that you believe is your go-to? Like whenever you either feel down, that someone can go to and say, all right, I'm going to read this part because this is the part that's going to bring me back up.
Jeremiah 29 verse 11. It says, for I know the thoughts that I have towards you, thoughts of peace and not thoughts of evil, to give you an expected end. So a lot of the times when I look at situations, because things change every day, right? And if there's something that's really bad, it may be bad in our eyes, but if I trust my Father, God, who is my Father, right? He would never give me nothing evil. So if things happen where, like, let's say, I don't know, they try to cancel me, I can then surrender, because when I look at that verse, I can be like, okay, God is my God. He's not going to give me anything evil. If he's allowing this stuff to happen to me, let's say, then it's for a reason. And it's weird. Like, it's just a shift of perspective. And I'll give you an example with my mother, right? My mom, she saw me carrying guns, selling drugs. She used to, the first week or two, she saw me getting back into all that stuff. She called me a monster. She's like, Johnny, you're a monster. You've been in prison from 12 to 25 and you still haven't changed. Look at you. And then one day, my mom started to say, you're the world's best gospel preacher. And mind you, I still have a gun. I'm still drinking, have the homies over the house, still, popped open the trunk, there's keys everywhere. And she's like, you're the world's best, you know. And I said, why? You know, what were you saying? Right. Then I started looking up psych boards, you know, schizophrenia and stuff. Because I'm just
Oh my God, that's true. Okay, wow. You literally thought you were tripping.
yeah, because I'm like, how could you say that?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then what I realized now, obviously, is that she stopped looking at the situation and the circumstance that her son is an evil person.
Right.
And she gave it up to the verses. She started to look at me through the verse and the lens of the Bible. And so it was saying that, you know, if she believes Acts 16:31, if you believe, your household will be saved. So her faith would save me. That's what the Bible says. And in her mind, she gives this testimony.
Yeah.
And she says,
so beautiful.
she says, it didn't make sense to me, but if I just believed it, she said, it really like gave me peace.
Wow.
So she kept saying that to me.
And it literally came true.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what am I doing here now? Preaching.
Exactly.
You know, what do I do with
The
my
best
life?
in the world, the best. You know.
So I'm just like, you know, it's crazy. And that's what I learned from my mom, also from my pastors, that, you know, I'm going to not react to the situation, which most people do. Because once you know, profits are down or whatever, people, there is that feel of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
Yes.
And initially, yes, those spots pop up for me too. And I'm like, you know what? When I listened to Johnny, this voice in my head, although it made sense, where did I end up? Always empty, always lonely. But although this word doesn't make sense to me, but when I followed it, just like it didn't make sense for me to say sorry to my dad,
Right.
peace entered my heart.
Right.
So nowadays, I don't worry about reacting to the situation. It's weird. Like, it's not about dodging the burden or even changing the burden. It's overcoming the situation, right? So I've learned, like, okay, I'm going to overcome through the word. If I don't have the word, then of course I'm only stuck with this. Then I have to have my own capabilities, my own, you know, limitations, and try to deal with this depression and loneliness while also doing these podcasts and stuff. But I've learned, like, no, I'm going to trust the word above my thoughts. That's what a real Christian does. They represent them something bigger than themselves. Most people accessorize God, mold him, marginalize him to like fit their hearts. You get what I'm saying? But me, I've learned to only accept the word. Because this thing keeps changing. It's like you lose your keys, you know. Like, there's times where I've lost my keys and I'm full of rage. Right? I'm like, man, what the frick? I'm so stupid. Oh, exactly. It's crazy. Like, emotions are so fleeting and such a deception, because once I find it, it's gone. My anger's gone.
Right.
I know that's true. But it's like, so I realize, I can't, as much as I feel like I'm right, as much as that's all fleeting. You know, the Bible is true. It tells us that our hearts lie to us. It tells us that, you know, we should be happy because me waking up this morning is already thankful. Having all my limbs, meeting good people like you guys. It's all good, right? But then Satan hyper focuses on 1, 2, maybe 3 bad things.
Right.
And then we just trade $10 million for 10,000 things.
Exactly. Yes.
But what do you, since we're getting really close to our end, what do you have as far as future expectations? So you're here now. You obviously... you look amazing based on, even though you've gone through a lot, you look like you have not really gone through it. Maybe you have a way of being able to hide it. Obviously, it's probably inside.
Right. And before you ask this question, where'd you get your tattoos? Like, is that you, or was it like because you were in the game?
Yeah. A mixture of both. Okay. I got a lot of these tats to cover up prison tats. Gang tats. Gang tattoos. But I have a friend, shout out to him, Mr. Lee Tattoo.
Mr. Lee.
Where's he located?
Yeah,
he's in Northeast LA.
Okay, Mr. Lee is
Figueroa Street Tattoo.
Oh, there you go.
So tell him Johnny sent you.
There you go.
The homie.
Okay, there you go. Look. I had to ask. Yeah, no, for sure. They're like famous.
So you do read the word a lot on Instagram, and obviously we've seen some amazing turnout on your YouTube. You have more than 7 million on some of your views.
Amazing.
So what have you seen as far as, we like to ask this question, is the future Johnny Chang?
Yeah.
What do you believe you're going to look like in 5 years from now? So 5 years Johnny is, what is that?
So I think for me, the main thing is always preaching the gospel. It's always planting hope inside of people's hearts. So whatever God leads me, he leads me. But the beautiful thing is he's now getting me into public speaking, keynote speaking. Yeah. He's also doing, this networking stuff,
right?
But also building my own platform. So now I have my Zoom Bible studies where I teach. We're literally going from Genesis to Revelations.
Wow.
And so I have that, it's a bonus content platform. Okay. And I want to do that because I'm naturally a minister at heart, right? And I'm ordained, everything. So I want to preach. And then I also want to go to prisons and do these venues. So I want to do tours where I'm in control of what I can talk about, which is the gospel. And then I have fans everywhere now, Australia, everywhere. So I want to do little like tours and kind of sell out like shows almost. Yeah, right. And then have them like just here and then do very interactive stuff. Like how I do on Instagram Live, if you guys notice, I try to answer every question. Yeah, it's just how that's great. So I want to do that on a venue. Okay. Or like someone can come up and they may bring their family and be like, hey, this is one question. I want to find a way that I can do that. I see myself doing that in 5 years. Okay. We're already setting that up now. Wow. But yeah, and then just doing more content, getting more discovered by people, because I feel like this type of gospel has to be preached to people. Yeah. It's not judgmental. I don't want it to be judgmental because this person in the world may be better than me, and in my standard, time may be better than this person, but I'm trying to take God's standard. And with God's standard, we all fall short. So how can I judge somebody, whether they're this orientation, that person, that gang, whatever, like I can't judge them. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because in front of God, if we stand in front of God, we're both the same. Right. Sin is sin, right? So I'm just trying to make people understand that, I apologize on behalf of the Christian community that there's a lot of church hurt, where people are just sad. And I went through that too, and I was like, Christians are this way, but they're hypocritical. And I realized that's not really a true Christian. True Christian gives you the heart of God. So that's where I see myself in 5 years, is just having a platform and advancing the kingdom, but in a way that's relatable and that's not pushy. And just like I just really want to help people honestly come to like this happiness in their heart.
I love that. And you know what? I actually, inspired me to ask you another question. So the whole aspect of sinning, right? So sinning is kind of like heretics, right? Like not heretics. I mean, we're born with it coming, right? Yeah. So in the fact of sinning, I think that sometimes a lot of people think the moment you sin or maybe killed somebody or hurt somebody, you feel like it's game over. Yeah. Maybe I might as well just be a bad person. Right. It's game over for me. Right. Do you believe that someone like yourself, or anybody that has done certain crimes, do you believe that access to heaven is something you are granted to?
I think so. I think God has sent Jesus before we even asked, right? I didn't know about him thousands of years ago, 2,000 years ago. Yeah. And he made it by grace. Because if you could work it in, then all of us would fail. Right? Because God needs perfection. Right? A lot of people say it's not about being sinless, it's about sinning less, but that doesn't make sense. That's like me, who's Chinese, saying if I eat less orange chicken, I'll be less Chinese. If I don't listen to Chinese music, Chinese opera, and wear kung fu slippers, it doesn't make sense, right? It's like because I'm Chinese, that's why I wear kung fu slippers, right? Because people are sinners, that's why they sin. So we have to understand sin as an identity rather than an action. That's why God says if you lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. If you call somebody stupid, right, or think to yourselves like you hate them, you've already murdered. So he's trying to make the whole world guilty so that Jesus can, a guilty person standing in front of Jesus will receive this happiness and hope like I did. I couldn't say I was a good person, right? I did some evil things, God. But when I met that gospel, that it became so big. Right. Versus Satan does the job of telling people you're good. Trust yourself. You're a good person. So when something good comes to you, you're like, hey, you're going to get to heaven. I died for you. I know because I'm good. I deserve it. It's like this heart. Whereas like when I'm like, I know I'm going to hell. Right. You said I can go to heaven. And it's a different type of love. Right. So like sin is not, I choose to do this. I choose to do that. There's 613 laws in the Bible. I've read the Bible 22 times. I don't even know them verbatim. Okay. In order to follow law, you must know the law. Yeah. It's not just 10 commandments. Right. They can Google it. It's called the mitzvah. Right. Okay. And then not only that, there's the new covenant laws too. Love your neighbor as yourself. All this other stuff. So, and God says, if you want to keep my laws, you have to keep them perfectly. Keep them all. Birth to death. Right. Wow. And so there's a stairway to heaven and there's an elevator. The elevator is Jesus. You want to try to work your way up, handle your business, but it's a chain link. It's like if you break one, the Bible says, James chapter 2, you break them all. God made it that way so that we can't say, yeah, I don't need Jesus. I'm going to try to do well.
Wow. So that makes so much sense.
So then that's why people will take the law and judge people. Yeah, see, you're doing that. You need to stop. But it's like, wait. If you read your Bible and not go off of your feels and not go off of your thoughts, the Bible says you also will go to hell because you have to keep all of the law. It's not, oh, I'm going to try harder and God knows my heart. He does know your heart. That's why he says it's evil. He said he's already made that. So people don't understand. They just have to believe. It's really that simple. I can't do it. Let's say if I could do it. Let's say if I could go to, heaven by doing well, loving people, sharing, food with them, buying them clothes, just being a good Samaritan. Why then did Jesus have to die? We could do all of that. Monks do that, right? Peaceful. Thailand is called the land of smiles. And I go there, all the Buddhists are like smiling at you. They're super respectful. They'll help you. But it's because sin is not an action. It's an identity. You need to be washed and reborn again into the identity of God.
So you put it in the hands of Jesus.
So when my thoughts tell me I'm a sinner. Word of God says, no, you're righteous through Jesus. I died for you. I didn't fail. I didn't go on the cross and say it's a deposit. I didn't say it's a loan, pay it back. I said it's finished. It's finished. The payment for all of my sins, past, present, and future. And so if he says that, all I got to do is believe. But my thoughts tell me, no, you sin every day. You have a lustful heart. You want to do drugs. You do this, you do that. But that's not the truth, Are my thoughts right? Or is what God is saying? And I'll finish with this. There's a story of the wedding at Cana. It's the first miracle in the Bible. That Jesus performed. He turns water into wine. Have you guys heard of that? Right. So when they ran out of wine, Jesus tells the servants, fill 6 water pots with water. So they fill it with water. That's the easy part. It's water pots, right? And then he goes, good, draw and serve. And they're like, Jesus, he's asking for wine. This is water. But he says, draw and serve. Right then and there, they look at it as water, they touch it as water, they taste it as water. But Jesus says it's wine, right? Later, they draw it and they bring it to the governor, and it is indeed the best tasting wine. What that story was teaching him was what they saw and what they felt needed to be forsaken in order for them to draw. Do you understand? And then they experienced the wine. Likewise, I look at myself, I feel like I'm a sinner, I see my sin. But Jesus says, no, you're wine. The blood has covered you. You're righteous. Who's right?
Exactly.
It feels like I'm right. He's right. So then I realize, oh, I'm righteous. That's why I never tell people, you need to stop sinning. You guys notice. I tell them, you're righteous.
And I do believe that.
And people change. Because if you think you're a sinner, you're going to live YOLO lifestyle. Well, you know what? I'm going to mess up anyway, so I might as well just do it up. You know what I mean? Of course. But if you tell people, no, you have a master. He made you righteous. He died for you. Different type of love comes in, and you want to live for that person like I am. I mean, so.
Wow, that's really powerful. And Johnny, thank you for sharing your this is an epic life. Like you have lived a lot of lives involved with it.
Many lives.
The series years they've been alive in this earth. So
guys, so young.
So guys, thanks so much for being here. Honestly, Johnny Chang, where can people find you on the video platform?
So you guys can go on YouTube and just type in Johnny Chang. You guys can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Johnny-Chang. You guys can also find me on No Script Fellowship, which is in Instagram. And then TikTok is the Johnny Chang. It's 2 E's, THEE, Johnny Chang. And then I also have a website. It's book, like the Bible book, johnnychang.com. And you guys can do one-on-ones with me. I counsel therapists, lawyers, doctors, influencers and stuff. And help them out, get you guys out of that.
Awesome. Johnny, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Expect this content out on Sunday, not this Sunday, but the following. Much love, and thank you, Johnny, for being with us.
Bless you.
Hi, guys.